Hello and welcome. How many of you would have gone through this decision on whether to use ActiveMQ and what exactly is ActiveMQ and what scenario it is? And so that is what in this video we're going to go a deep dive of ActiveMQ as well as the newer version, the newer kid in the block Artemis, and we'll provide a nice comparison for you all to understand. So sit back, watch and relax and we can get started. So this is the agenda that I wanted to cover today on what is the messaging system. I'll go over the ActiveMQ Classic overview, Artemis overview, provide a comparison and conclude. And before we get to the introduction, we all know that in today's digital era, where real-time processing and microservices architecture dominate, how the importance of efficient message brokering is prevalent. It's the message processing is the backbone that ensures seamless communication between different parts of an application to handle everything from simple to complex tasks of complex distributed systems. And in my previous videos, what I have done is I have shown how cloud providers, native cloud provider messaging works. I had provided the comparison as well. You could click the link on the top to understand the differences. But this is where I wanted to show a different flavor of messaging. In this case, it's ActiveMQ, because a lot of times applications may not, or customers may not want to go with a cloud native or would rather prefer a cloud agnostic overview over here. And they would want to take care of the setup themselves and want to have more control. And that is where I have helped a lot of customers set up ActiveMQ as part of their environment application and enterprise setup. And that is where we are going to share all the experiences as part of this discussion. So please subscribe, share this channel, share with all your friends, help them get educated. Help them know about Arina Technologies and how we can help them as well in terms of their digital journey. What we understand is that the importance of messaging applications, right? Because the different options that is there is there are ActiveMQ and Apache and Artemis. The standard are the two most prominent message brokers, but both essentially same the same fundamental purpose. Which you might wonder, what is the fundamental purpose, right? Which one should I choose for my project? So that is what we'll get into and as part of the setup. Now here, we spoke about the messaging as part of the setup, but this is where I wanted to just talk about how messaging will allow applications to exchange data seamlessly and efficiently to drive better performance, greater scalability, and enable real-time data flow across different parts of an application. Now, in every protocol, we cannot use them many protocols. There's TCP, there is UDP, and different protocols are used. In messaging, it's primarily UDP. You would be using the protocol compared to TCP in the HTTP protocol compared to the web. So that is where web protocol is not always better because sometimes you may want to broadcast or you may have an influx of messages for which the web may not be there or HTTP may not be the right protocol to use. That is where we have to have this messaging architecture in place over here. Now that we understand why messaging is important, right? Let's explore these messages and concept in a more detailed level. So this is where, right, wanted to provide overview of brokers and roles. Now in this diagram, what I've done is I've shown the different brokers. Brokers you could consider as queues and topics. What are queues? Queues are essentially when you want to send message from a point-to-point communication. That is one producer as shown in the diagram. It is sending to one consumer. That could be a use case for a queue. What is a topic? Now, topic could be considered as a radio broadcast where one person is speaking and it is being broadcasted to multiple listeners that are available. Same concept also is there in messaging as well. There is one producer. It sends a message to a topic. Topic could be considered as a messaging broker. And there are many consumers who can subscribe to the different topics. There will get matters more complicated because there's going to be acknowledgement that needs to be done, message retention parameters that need to be done as part of the server setup. And all those, because you wouldn't want a scenario that the message is there, but without processing the message, the server removes the messages because there is a message expiration in place. So that is where you'll have to consider other different patterns in place to ensure that there is no message loss. And usually in a lot of the brokers, in fact, even in ActiveMQ, which uses KahaDB as in the backend. The data will be persisted to either local disks, or if you are in a cluster setup, it is going to be persisted to a storage area network, also called as a SAN, or network attached storage, which is also called as a NAS. So disks are very, very common in messaging architectures that you would be storing. Database can also be used. You can also store your messages that come into the broker to a database. But in our experience, what we have seen is that if you store messages in a database compared to storing on a disk, there is a significant performance degradation. And something we don't advise to our customers. We never say that, okay, you use a database, because there are different scenarios for using different use cases. Database is not this one that you want to persist the messages. So as part of the broker setup, can you do it? Yes, you can. And that is why I put it over here. Should you do it? No, you should not use database to store messages for a cluster application. It will significantly degrade your application performance. And this is where I'll move on to third bullet over here, which is what are the key features of reliable messaging, which is one is the asynchronous communication. That is, the producer can send the message and it could rest assured, or probably not even rest assured, but it could at least fire and forget. That is, it knows that, okay, I've sent the message from my side. The consumer, whenever it's ready, it would be able to process the messages. It provides total decoupling compared to an HTTP protocol where it's going to be synchronous. There's a client sitting, waiting for the response to come back. Unlike that, the broker system, asynchronous modeling. It does provide significant reliability. It is a lot more fault tolerant as well compared to HTTP, where you could have a farm of clusters created. You could have a server farm created where multiple servers could be set up as part of this setup. And you will have a very resilient messaging system as part of this thing, the setup that you have. So I hope this provides a good overview about what exactly is the messaging application, how the broker architecture is. It's a little simple over here. There will be many parameters, but I didn't want to kind of overwhelm you guys at the very initial on what messaging is. In fact, it's a very powerful tool of choice, which is every organization will require in some form or the other. And your architecture should use this pattern as well to make robust applications. So what are the popular messaging systems? I believe everybody would have some point or the other worked on the ones. And on the previous videos, you can check it out. We have gone over in depth on the different messaging patterns in the cloud. That is, like we have in AWS, SQS, in Azure, we have Service Bus, in Google, we have Cloud Pub Sub, that is there. But other than that, what are the other ones? Kafka is very popular nowadays. Kafka provides streaming of millions of messages that you could do. It provides on-prem option as well. Nowadays, cloud also provides an option out there for a managed service option. RabbitMQ is another popular option which is used by customers. It is similar to ActiveMQ, which is the topic of this presentation. It is likewise, but Apache MQ is from ActiveMQ is from Apache, and RabbitMQ is it's on its own. And then there is IBMMQ. I believe we all have heard about IBMMQ. It's kind of a very old product that is there. TIBCO is there. We have a lot of consultants who have worked in TIBCO. TIBCO has been one of the pioneers in messaging with its enterprise messaging standard product that is there, which has been used across financial firms and a lot of enterprise customers. PubNub is another one. Mule ESB is another one, which is again a competitor of TIBCO, and it provides a robust messaging with this AnyPoint platform that is used. So point is to show you that there are plethora of options out there for messaging. You could choose the one that fits your organization needs, as well as the vision of your organization needs to be aligned with the messaging product that you choose. Now, what exactly is Apache ActiveMQ as part of this? Now, Apache MQ is one of the oldest and most widely used open source messaging brokers. It supports multiple protocols, and it is designed for high performance and reliability. And this is where it is written in Java. It is a very old product. It is built in Java, and it provides cross-language client support. It has many APIs for multiple clients that you could choose. And there are a variety of cross-language clients that are supported in protocols. AMQP is one of them, and the OpenWire is another protocol that is pretty much very used. Stomp is another one. MQTT is also one of the popular protocol that is very widely used. JMS is supported for compliance, for features like message queues, and publish subscribe messaging patterns. So it does adhere to the JMS message specification as well, which is the Java messaging service as well. There are robust features as what I mentioned. There is message persistence. It has KahaDB as the persistence model. There is a delivery guarantee at most once, or at least at once, or exactly once as well. Also, it provides transaction support as well. There are certain advanced features such as message groups, virtual destinations, and composite destinations. There is features for high availability, clustering, and persistence to ensure reliable message delivery. So with this, let me just show you how you can go about it. Then as part of this video, I won't go into the setup of the ActiveMQ, but let me show you how you can just quickly go and download ActiveMQ. So this is what you could do is you could come here and let me get to the Firefox. So this is the Apache ActiveMQ site where you can come in here and this is the URL. You could come in here and you could see the different versions out there for ActiveMQ. Now, Classic, if you see the name is Classic, it's kind of, now the new version is 6.10, but we have worked with organizations going back to the 5 version as well. So, but the 6.1 is the newer one out there. And Artemis is the one that's also another topic. It's a new architecture protocol, not architecture protocol, architecture setup compared to the classic one as well. So there are organizations using Artemis as well, but both have their own pros and cons. But the point is that you could come here, you could see the comparison also that they have done. This provides a good comparison, but also I have provided from my experience and our experience at Arina Technologies, how we have worked with customers, we have compiled that comparison, so it will be beneficial for you. But you could also come here. You could download the latest version out here, or you could come here and download the ones. It is a pretty simple setup. What I'll try to do, drop in your comment if you want to see the setup of how we can go about doing ActiveMQ setup, and I'll make a video on subsequent topic as well. But this is where what you could do, you could download the video, download the ActiveMQ out here, and do those things over here. So it's kind of a free thing. There's nothing for you to do. There's no sign up or anything required. Just you can download and check it out. So this is a site that you should be aware of, and for ActiveMQ at least. Artemis overview over here. Now, Artemis is a newer and high-performant multi-protocol message broker, and it is part of the ActiveMQ project itself. It is essentially designed to be the successor of ActiveMQ 5X with a focus on modern features and scalability. Now, how was the evolution from ActiveMQ? Essentially, Artemis, it originated from the HornetQ code base, which was donated to the Apache ActiveMQ project. So it was HornetQ, which was donated. Artemis is essentially intended to be a more modern and feature-rich broker that was intended to address some of the architectural limitations of ActiveMQ 5X version. And this is where, this was the whole intent of Artemis, right? Essentially to provide the gaps that are there, and we'll cover the comparison that will provide more overview of what exactly the gaps were. Now, Artemis, like ActiveMQ also, it supports multiple protocols such as AMQP, MQTT, OpenWire, and Stomp, which makes it flexible for the different use cases that are out there. What it also provides is it does have data replication, shared storage, and the ability to define backup servers that can take over in the event of a primary server failure. Setting up clustering is a lot more simpler in Artemis compared to ActiveMQ. And as I said, right, there is support for advanced clustering capabilities and how it is going to be supported. Now, the different comparison that is there, like what is the IO connectivity layer? For Apache ActiveMQ Classic, it uses the TCP, which is the synchronous, and NIO non-blocking one, which is the no IO connectivity layer. For Artemis, it is implemented using NetT, which is a non-blocking framework, and thus you would need to choose between different implementations, as non-blocking one is used by the default. So you have multiple options in Artemis compared to ActiveMQ Classic as well. WebSockets are also supported out of the box in ActiveMQ, right? So as compared to ActiveMQ, it is a lot more protocol supported. So essentially, there is no need for separate WebSockets transport like in ActiveMQ. Like Apache ActiveMQ, it doesn't have that out-of-the-box support. This has out-of-the-box support. TCP NetT acceptor in Artemis will detect WebSocket clients and handle them accordingly. So there is a lot better support for Artemis compared to ActiveMQ. What about the messaging store? Where is the messages persisted? As I had said, ActiveMQ uses KahaDB. That is the name of it's KahaDB, to ensure the messages are persisted on the disk. And the way it is set up is there's a message journal set up for fast sequential storing of messages and an index for retrieving of the messages when needed. Now, Artemis, what it does is it has its own message store. Instead of putting in a separate disk, it would be having its own message store, which consists only of the append-only message journal and doesn't require message index. Thus, it will have a better performance compared to ActiveMQ. Paging. What is paging? Paging is a process that happens when a broker can't hold on multiple messages in memory. Because there can be a scenario. Server has a finite memory and CPU. That is where, so if there's a client that is sending too many messages to it, obviously the server cannot handle that many messages. So what is going to do? It will page those messages. Essentially, it will move those messages that it cannot process to the disk, so that once it is done with the processing, there is less load of it. It will bring the messages back from the server, from the disk, to process it again, and that concept is called paging. So in ActiveMQ, how is paging done? It is done using cursors, which are basically a cache of messages that are ready to be dispatched to the consumer. Cursors, it will essentially try to keep all incoming messages in cache, which is it will store it in memory. And when the available memory messages are added to store, and then the caching stops. And when the space becomes available again, the broker is going to pull the messages from the disk and populate the cache, which is the memory, out of there. So because of this need to read the journal from time to time during a broker runtime, that is where the journal index needs to be maintained as part of the ActiveMQ Classic setup. And how is it done in Artemis? So in Artemis, the whole journal is kept in memory as well, and messages are dispatched directly from the journal. And when we run out of memory, obviously the memory is going to be finite. It's not going to be infinite for Artemis as well. It's going to still be running on a server only. So when Artemis runs out of memory, it's also going to be page the messages on the producer side before they hit the broker. So the messages, instead of being paged at the server side on the broker side, they'll have to be paged at the producer side. They are going to be stored in the sequential page files in the same order as they arrived. So that is where the sequencing is kind of out of the box maintained. And similar to ActiveMQ, once the memory is freed, the messages are going to be moved from the page files into the journals. And with paging working like this, messages are read from the file journal only when the broker starts up. So thus it will provide little better performance compared to the ActiveMQ OTA, even for the paging scenario. Now, what about message addressing and routing? Like, as I said, ActiveMQ supports pretty much all the basic protocols like MQTT and ANQP, and they are translated into OpenWire. What about Artemis? Artemis essentially uses anycast routing to implement point-to-point semantics to provide where there be only one queue for the address and all consumers will subscribe to it, and this address and routing scheme will be used across all protocols. Now, for the broker instance, how will you do the installation of the broker to ensure that there is minimal upgrade and maintenance in the future? So this is where, you could have it as in ActiveMQ, you may or may not do it, something that we usually have it as a standalone for many of our customers, or we set up as a cluster setup. Now, in Artemis, we'll have to separately create a broker instance. So both, you would have to create a broker instance separately. There is not much difference, but I just wanted to kind of provide that in ActiveMQ, it's something like a optional, because one of the main reasons you won't choose Artemis is for high availability or a better clustering configuration. So that is where I put the comparison as you would need to explicitly create a broker instance. Now, where do you go and do the configuration? And this is something that is probably just a disk setting, but I just wanted to put it out here that in ActiveMQ, what you would do is you would go into conf, there's a conf folder, and in the conf folder there's activemq.xml. There are other files as well. There is users.xml and other files, but all of those are tied into the main file, which is activemq.xml. In Artemis, what is it? That's etc broker.xml, just a file change, as well as the format change is also there. And what about the environment variables, such as JVM arguments and all those other settings? Where will you do that? And all of that, you will essentially try to do it in the environment folder, which is in the bin. While in Artemis, you will do it as in the etc Artemis folder. So Artemis makes configuration easier as well compared to you navigating multiple folders. What about logging? So the way the logging is done, it's done in the etc logging properties. You would provide the logging option, And likewise in Artemis as well, you would provide the logging option as well. Now this logging option, it can be configurable. It's not something that you could always change where you want to persist the logs. It's you could do it in both servers as well. Likewise, right? How do you start the ActiveMQ broker in the foreground? I mentioned the command. How are you going to do Artemis? I put the command as well. How you will make it as a broker as a service. And this again, the reason I put it is just to provide comparison. At the end, most likely you're going to be running ActiveMQ on Linux box where you could have the steps to start it as a service. And I could, as part of the next video, what I could create these clustering documentation so you are aware of those. And what are the connectors? I think I've gone over all the different connectors that are out there. That is, you have NI, OpenWire, you have a non-blocking one as part of the setup, and different connectors out there. And what about the destinations? So destinations are essentially like predefined in the destination section of the conf ActiveMQ file where you'll be providing the queues and topics. How you do it in Artemis. Essentially in Artemis, you are going to be defining in the broker.xml addresses section. That is where you're going to be defining the destination. JMS support, a classic Windows support 1.1. I do need to check on version 6. I believe it will be supporting JMS 2 as well. But at least the ones that we had worked, they had supported JMS 1. And Artemis supported JMS 2. Now, few other topic comparison on how, like creation of durable subscribers for ActiveMQ. You would create a durable subscriber per destination. And as the demand migrates across the network, duplicate durable subscribers will get created on each node and in the network, but they will not be migrated. So the end result you could have is duplicate message storage and ultimately duplicate delivery. While in Artemis, because a durable subscriber is modeled as a queue, this problem will not be arising because you have a queue separate compared to the separate setup for ActiveMQ. What about authentication? In ActiveMQ, you could have multiple setup. You could have JAS configuration. And the reason why I put JAS is because that's the recommended, but you could also have the authentication as part of the ActiveMQ setup. You could have it as part of the LDAP setup as well. You could have that setup. So, but in Artemis, what you would do is you would essentially have it as called roles compared to a user setup in ActiveMQ. What about authorization? What a specific user can or cannot do? Usually you would do it in ActiveMQ.xml for ActiveMQ. For Artemis, you would also do it in the broker.xml. What about the policies? What are policies? Policies essentially are that, okay, certain things could be done and, right, while certain things are denied, certain access is denied. That is what is called a policy. So for ActiveMQ Classic, it is defined based on the destination names. You could be granular, and that is what the granularity is. On the destination names, you could have provide policy that, okay, this one can receive messages from this thing. That's an example I'm just giving. And to send messages, you would need to define write policy to the respective brokers. In Artemis, it is applied to the core queues, and which is more fine-grained compared to ActiveMQ Classic. Now, what is the project status? ActiveMQ, as I said, it is very widely adopted because a lot of organizations had been using ActiveMQ. There is a comfort factor for moving from ActiveMQ to Artemis because of this reason. There's a huge adoption of it, and there's a learning curve in moving to Artemis. And what about Artemis? As I said, it is a successor to Classic, and organizations have started adopting it, but still the pace of adoption is not as much as the Classic one. What about performance? Performance is good. There's no doubt about it, but of course, with the clustering and HA setup, there will be some limitations also. The paging part, it will add to the performance part for Classic. Now, Artemis, as I said, right, there is better paging, there is load balancing out of the box, there is a seamless clustering setup, so that will eventually result in higher performance. And what is the persistence mechanism? You could use KahaDB or you could store it in a database. And that is where. Should you store in a database? Probably not. And this is where in Artemis, you would use a fast URL for message persistence. And the architecture, I think we have gone through. I won't go into detail. You could check the previous ones out to there for comparison. HA high availability. It's a master-slave configuration where you could have a 2-server cluster setup done, and how the master-slave configuration for high availability. And what about an Artemis? It is out-of-the-box support, sort of native support, and which provides for automatic failover and shared nothing live backup configurations. Clustering for ActiveMQ, it is basic clustering support with network of brokers. You would go into the ActiveMQ file, provide the other broker configuration, and it's a pain. We have done for so many customers. It's not a simple setup. You will have to do a lot of setting, but drop in a comment if you want to see the clustering setup, and I can create a video for you all over there. While for Artemis, it is seamless clustering, and it has automatic client failover, so it is a lot more resilient compared to the classic. Management and monitoring. This is where you would want to ensure that which one supplies better management. But in this case, what I have noticed is, and inputs based upon our consultants as well, that both seem to provide the same monitoring because inherently it uses JMX. Message filtering. What is filtering? It's essentially a rule-based message filtering that you could do. Based upon you want to select certain messages, you want to not have process certain messages, you could do that. And in ActiveMQ, what we have experienced is somewhat basic selectors you could set up, while in Artemis, you could have more advanced filtering capabilities. And also you could have custom plugin support for the integration. So Artemis will provide a much better comparison. What about security? There, as I said, we had discussed this above. Security, it will support authentication authorization. Artemis, there's more advanced security features, enhanced features. And there's a support for SSL, TLS as well, and JAS as well, and a lot more simpler setup for that as well. Federation for ActiveMQ Classic and Artemis, there is, it requires custom configuration for ActiveMQ. While Artemis, it is federation is native support. What is federation? You might be asking, right? Federation is essentially like if I have a social provider, I want to use if I have a OAuth token. OAuth token is what the social media providers will be using for authenticating who you are. Because if you would have gone to any website, like you would see that, okay, you want to log in using Facebook, you want to log in using Google. That is what you would have the federation token as part of the standard OAuth authentication to provide details on which user is providing it without creating a user in their own system. That is what essentially federation means. So this is a good feature because you could have a scenario of having, say, federated users as part of your login. So I think that's the end of the presentation I had. And I hope this was able to provide you at least some overview or comparison between what exactly is ActiveMQ, what exactly is the Artemis one. If that name was being thrown, I hope it provides you a good comparison on when to use which one, the use cases for which, and the different messaging options out there. When you make an architecture decision, you know which one to choose and accordingly can document. Please like, subscribe, share the video. Please contact us for any of your cloud requirements or cloud consulting requirements. We have decades of experience in cloud, and we can definitely help your organization take the right step in cloud. With that, thank you and see you in the next video.